They didn't just try to stop Caitlin Clark, they came after her from the very first possession. It was clear this wasn't basketball as usual, there was a different tone, a different edge. Every screen was harder, every closeout tighter, and then 2 moments turned Therna electric. Something happened out there twice that made the crowd erupt, benches stir, and the officials freeze. It wasn't just rough play, it felt like a warning, and yet there she was still standing still, locked in, still dangerous. Most players would have unraveled, most would have lost their edge, but Clark didn't blink. Instead, she got colder, sharper, more focused, and then flipped the entire game on its head. You want to know what happened after Thea tried to break her? Watch closely because this is where everything changed. First quarter didn't explode right away, but it simmered with intensity from thievery. Beginning, Natasha Howard got the action going with a sharp cut and a reverse layup that drew contact. Shekemly stepped to the line and knocked down both free throws, giving the Fever an early boost. On the next possession, Tina Charles worked the high post and took advantage of a defensive switch, feeding Nelson Oda, who had slipped into space. The layup was clean and simple, beautiful. The Sun were showing they knew how to exploit matchups. Olia Bostenthon brought energy that changed their rhythm of the game. She crashed the floor for a loose ball, got her hands on it, and immediately found Howard in transition. There was no one in front of her, and Howard went coast to coast for an easy bucket. It was the kind of hustle play that doesn't just shift momentum, it defines it. Boston followed it up moments later by muzzling her way through defenders in the paint and finishing strong with her left hand. Her presence inside was undeniable. Indiana's offensive flow continued as Kelsey Mitchell drove into the teeth of the defense, and just when the lane collapsed, kicked the ball out to Lexi Hull, waiting by on the arc. The shot left her hands, rhythm, and splashed through. Then Asif on cue, Caitlin Clark reminded everyone she's the most feared rookie in the league. The defense tried to top block her, thinking they could deny her the ball. She baited them with a fake, acting like wanted the handoff, then snapped back behind the arc and drilled a 3 right in her defender's face. It was the kickoff move that exposes defensive schemes and punishes any hesitation, but the Sun weren't going anywhere. They went right back to Tina Charles, who kept delivering. She established deep post position, turned with control, and knocked down Asmuth left-handed hook. Kelsey Mitchell countered by rejecting a screen and slicing through the lane, laying it in high off the glass. Again, Charles responded. Same move, same result, lefty hook money. And when they fed her again in the next possession, she simply rose over her defender and laid it in off a lobby pass. There was nothing fancy, just veteran footwork and total command. Off paint, Indiana, though, kept finding ways to answer. Mitchell pushed the pacing transition and bulldozed her way to an author tough finish with her left hand. Then came one of the most perfectly exited plays of the night. The Sun trapping Clark on a pick and roll bot. She didn't panic, she read the floor, found Boston, who immediately slipped the ball to Howard under the basket. The pass sequence was fast, fluid, and lethal. On the very next possession, Clark delivered a dagon, this time spotting Boston with a deep early seal and launching a full-court dart from half-court. Boston caught it in stride and laid it in with us. It was a clinic in timing and vision, but just when it looked like the Fever would end the quarter with full memento, Jaylen Brown got the ball, with clock winding down, and found herself on Clark. She took her time, created just enough space, and launched an off-balance 3 that dropped it through the net. It was a tough contested show, the kind you have to tip your hat. Even great defenders get scored on. ASD buzzer sounded. The Fever held an narrow lead, but the tone had been set for what was clearly becoming something more than just a regular season game. It was 24-23, and the battle was on live. Beginning, the second quarter began with a scoring drought on both sides. But Kelsey Mitchell was the first to break through with the shot clock winding down. She stayed calm, surveyed the floor, and delivered a slick step through that floated in through traffic. It wasn't just a basket, it was a tone setter. Earlier, Boston followed up with a signature move. She faked the handoff to Caitlin Clark, froze the defender just long enough, then rose up and knocked down a clean mid-range jumper. It was simple, but surgical, the kind of play Boston makes look routine. The Sun battled back when Nelson Oda crashed. Theglass fought through a tangle of arm sand, muscled up a finish over Howard. It was one of their few moments of strength in a quarter that was slowly slipping away, but Indiana responded with purpose. Mitchell got right back into the action, the screen and slicing into the paint for an and-one finish that had the crowd on their feet. She didn't just absorb the contact, she controlled it. Moments later, the Sun tried something they should have already known better than to attempt. They trapped Caitlin Clark again at the top of the play. She made them pay immediately with one quick crossover. She left the big stuck in space, created separation, and drilled a deep 3 right over the top. It was punishing, the kind of play that kills for sure. On the next trip down, the Fever executed perfectly out of a timeout. Credit to the coaching staff for drawing it up, and to the players for running it sharp. Clark found Dantas on a hard cut, and she finished the layup cleanly. Clark wasn't done, though. After getting double-teamed, she retreated buoyant. The arc the defense sagged for just a moment, and she let it fly. Another three, and another dagger. Then came the offense. Clark jumped to passing lane, and triggered a fast break, pushing the bat on a 2-on-1 before delivering a perfect bounce pass to Mitchell. Fourth finish on the very next possession. Did it again, another steal, this time without hesitation. She was everywhere. Clark closed the quarter by linking up with Dantas, again this time on a smooth even go that ended with a reverse layup under the rim. Every possession felt like it ran through her. The Sun finale responded with just over a minute left, thanks to a wild save by Tina Charles that led to a fast break layup on the other end. Still, the damage had been done by halftime. Indiana had taken control, leading 47-39. The third quarter opened with the Sun trying to regain their footing. Marina Maber found a gap in the defense and slipped through for a backdoor layup that caught the Fever momentarily off guard. It was a clean, well-timed cut, and it gave Connecticut a flicker of hope that they could start chipping away at the deficit. But Indiana was ready to answer. Lexi Hall ran the floor hard and spotted upon the wing. In transition, the defense was slow to recover, and she punished them with a rhythm three that dropped Pidclean through the net. Aaliyah Boston kept orchestrating the offense like a point forward. She faked the handoff just long enough to pull two defenders toward her, and then whipped a pass to Theckener, where Kelsey Mitchell was waiting without hesitation. Mitchell let it fly and knocked down another three. Tostrich the lead even further than Kamithi. Play that left everyone shaking their heads. Caitlin Clark scanning Theffler mid-dribble spotted Natasha Howard slipping behind the defense with zero eye contact and no warning. Clark fired Anouk bullet straight into Howard Shands for an easy finish. It was the kind-off pass that freezes defenders and ignites crowds. Things escalated quickly after that. Clark took a hard shot clearly above what's considered legal contact. The officials gathered review and issued two flagrant fouls. Surprisingly, no ejection was handed out, but Clark, unfazed and locked in step to the line and calmly drained all three free throws. The Fever didn't just gain points, they gained momentum and moral clarity. The hit didn't rattle Clark, it sharpened her. The Sun tried to respond. Rivers caught the ball in the court. After a slight hesitation, released a high arcing shot that danced on the rim before finally dropping in. It was a shooter's bounce, but they needed anything they could get. Indiana kept pushing. Dantas worked her way deep into the Pastoozing footwork and patience to carve out space, then dropped in a soft touch finish on the next trip down for the Sun. Jalen Brown wrestled the ball free-during a scramble and hit a mid-range jumper. That was more about determination than finesse. But to close the quarter, it was Mitchell once again. She read the screen, rejected it, took her defender on one, and pulled up for a tough step back jumper near the elbow. The ball dropped through, and with it the Fever capped another dominant stretch as Thiebuser sounded to end the third. Indiana held a commanding 68-52 lead with 10 minutes left. The Sun came out swinging. Zia Rivers started the sequence strong defense just enough before dishing it off to Jalen Brown, who cut in framed wing and finished cleanly. At the rim it was a well-run play, and it gave Connecticut a quick jolt of energy, but Indiana didn't flinch on the next possession. Dantas slipped out of a pick and pop, set her feet behind the arc, and buried the three. It was a smart read, perfectly timed, and another example of how well Indiana spaced the floor all night. Rivers came back with a smooth mid-range jumper that hinted at her long-term potential. Her footwork was polished, her release confident, and even in the moment, it was clear she's going to be a problem in this league sooner rather than later. Then after a defensivist communique, Jalen Brown found herself wide open from beyond the arc and cashed it in. Without hesitation, the Sun had suddenly cut the lead to just 10, and the crowd stirred with a sense that this wasn't over. That's when Sophie Cunningham made her presence. Phelps took a hard dribble into the lane, held her balance through contact, and laid it in off the glass. It wasn't flashy, but it was the kind of responsive that kills momentum. Aaliyah Boston found herself alone behind the arc after a scramble, and shouldn't hesitate. The three splashed it through, and with it, the Fever began to stretch the lead again. Then Caitlin Clark took control. She came off a high pick and roll, split the defenders with ease, and stopped on a dime to bury Akam's smooth jumper just inside the arc. It was surgical, but her next moment was something entirely different. On the wing, she took the handoff in a media telecrisp behind her back, stepping into a deep three that she drained with pure confidence. The shot came over the very defender who had been pestering her all game. The arena roared, and it felt like a closing statement. The Sun ran a claverset to free Nelson Oda off a back screen for a layup, but by then the game was slipping through their fingers, and to make matters worse, they left Dantas witty open on the next possession, and she buried her second three of the quarter. India closed the night in dominant fashion, walking off the court with a convincing 88-71 win that felt as decisive as it looked on the scoreboard. English auto-generated